If you're a small business owner, you'll know just what it's like to be the chief everything officer. HR, payroll, employee benefits. Well, Gusto can do all of that for you. Gusto is online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses. It's all in one, remote friendly, and incredibly easy to use. It's quick and simple to switch to Gusto. Just transfer your existing data to get up and running fast. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonsoccer and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's gusto.com/lockedonsoccer.
The world's biggest soccer tournament has arrived, and you can trade the entire tournament on Kalshi. On Kalshi, you can trade every match from the opening stage all the way to the final. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code CUP26 to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
Whether you're watching your favorite NBA team at the arena, the bar, or hanging at home, grab an ice-cold Michelob Ultra and enjoy every moment of the NBA season. Stock up today and watch your team drop buckets with a bucket full of ice-cold Ultra. Michelob Ultra. Superior light beer.
Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2026 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra. Registered light beer. St. Louis, Missouri. Must be 21 plus to order alcohol. Alcohol available only in select markets.
3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Tricky Talks. Today it's just myself and Kate because Simon is behind the scenes. We're pretending to be professional and having an actual producer, and I may even hear him in my ear if I'm really lucky. We're really excited because today, for the first time, we've actually got somebody on the show who has lived all of our dreams and worn the very famous Garibaldi at the City Ground and around the country, as well as many other teams. Basically, if I introduce our guest, who everyone who supports Forest will know, Jason Lee, 14 different league clubs when I checked, including 2. So if I run through very quickly, 2 stints: Charlton, Stockport, Lincoln, Southend, Forest, Grimsby, Watford, Chesterfield, Peterborough and Falkirk, Boston, Northampton, Notts and Mansfield. And then Kettering, Corby, Ilkeston Town, Boston again and Arnold. I think that's it. So 14 league clubs and over 100 league goals. So really, really fantastic and really excited to welcome you today, Jason. And thank you very much for coming in.
Enjoying the sunshine. Obviously, dressed appropriately, got my England shirt on. I was tossing up what shirt to wear because obviously I've got the Forest stuff and the Forest link. And for those Forest fans that know, I am an Arsenal fan, so sometimes that gets in the way, do you know what I mean? And I was considering wearing that, but I thought, no, I'll give you guys a break.
Oh, we appreciate that. And of course, welcome to Kate as always. How are you, Kate?
I'm good. Really excited to be here and talking to Jason.
Excellent. Right, if I start off then, we're going to start with supporters of a certain age and a certain generation. There's only one place we can start, I'm afraid, and that is 1994, injury time, Peterborough away, 2-2. Forest, at that point in time, we thought we were not going up on that day because I think it was Millwall would leapfrogged us. They had been winning. Mark Crosley plays the ball long and then over the halfway line, a piece of skill that if it was done by a Brazilian, Jason, we'd be seeing it all the time. And I've watched it recently again to remind myself. And the way the ball was chested at 90 degrees into the on-running path of Stevie Stone, who put it into Stan Collymore, who smashed it in to spark scenes of celebration and carnage of which I've never witnessed before or since. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that game first, where we started. I appreciate you scored lots of goals for Forest as well. That contribution and that day, because I've never experienced a day like it, where Peter was not that far away. And did you get a sense of the whole takeover of the town? I saw off licenses completely emptied. It was just the most incredible day and how it was being there coming on and playing such an important part. What was the message in the dressing room at half time? Because obviously we went 2-0 down, which wasn't expected, and how it was afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, Southend, I started the season at Southend and obviously arrived at Forest in the March, okay, before deadline closed. So, and the manager was Barry Fry, who was my Southend manager, who was the manager of Peterborough United. So there's always some sort of synergy and link. So I was fully aware of the importance and the occasion. Obviously, there was a big away following from Forest throughout the season. You know, we had some good results on the road. Millwall, I scored the winner at Charlton. You know, Middlesbrough. But Forest was always fancied to go up, but there were some moments, especially when Stan was out for a period of time injured, that, you know, I'm not going to say it derailed, but I would imagine people got a little bit nervous. So
Yeah.
it's a long season. Getting out of the Championship is a long, hard slog. So you need to have all sets of different tools at your disposal. You need to play all different ways from time to time as well. You know, you can't be a purist all the time. And what we did have, what Frank Clark identified was a young, workmanlike, physical core to our team. You know, we had a presence. So the day was special. I only recently went to a Peterborough United fundraiser. It's the first time I've been back to do anything, which is crazy. I spent 3 years playing for the club, and it came up, you know, that occasion. And I do remember it well because I played my part. I remember the ball coming into me. The pitch wasn't great. It was a strange situation to be in, but they're exciting, aren't they? You know, when you're against, and then you need to obviously do something to pull it out of the bag. But we had enough in our team to do that. And I think when you're playing in the moment, you don't panic maybe as much as everybody around you does. Well, that's the idea. You're supposed to be calm and just get on with your game and hope that it comes together. So we was able to do that, and we was able to produce and get the results. And I remember people climbing on the floodlights and everyone's view. It was kind
That was probably Mollo.
Yeah, I think we've had this conversation, but it was good to see. I mean, crazy scenes. I've got a great picture of us all in the changing room after the game, obviously celebrating the fact that, you know, we've attained what we all set out to achieve. So it's good for the fans, you know, whether you do the open top bus and then you get into the town square, and you know how much it means to so many people. You know, for me, that was my first promotion.
Really?
Wow.
For me, yeah, I'm 23, I think, at the time. So I was relatively young, but quite experienced. I played probably 150 league games by that spell, but I had not attained any promotion with anybody. And yeah, Forest are a big club, so we just realised, I knew before I came to the club, the expectation and the ambition of everybody associated. So yeah, to get that done, Frank Clark did incredibly well to assemble a squad and to bounce back at the first opportunity. So no mean feat.
I suppose in some respects that squad was almost a transition squad, wasn't it? When you came into it, sort of like the remainder of the Clough squad, and then this new era of Frank Clark and that amazing promotion push. What was that like to be a part of?
Well, as I said, I came in March, but funnily enough, if you go back to the pre-season where Frank would have done all of these deals, you know, brought in Stan Collymore, it was a record transfer. They played Lincoln City. I'm at Lincoln. So a lot happened for me in a season. You know, I'm at Lincoln, but I know I'm going to leave because I've been there 2 years and there was quite a bit of interest in myself going to another club. So the pre-season fixture was at Sinsel Bank, and it was Forest. I don't know if you went, Adam, back in the day, but I wasn't allowed to play in that game because, you know, Southend was showing interest and other teams, and, you know, the last thing anybody wants is anyone to get injured. So I didn't play in that game, but I just remember watching that pre-season game thinking Nottingham Forest have taken over the stadium in terms of fans, and it felt like an away game. But it was a great occasion, and I really wish I was playing. And Stan was doing his stuff on the pitch, and Colin Cooper was a new signing. Des Little was a new signing, and then you still had the core of old players like David Phillips, Mark Crossley was still there. Stoney was a young player, but he was still there. Ian Warren. So you saw the gulf in class, So for me, it just shows you how things can work out. As my aspirations went up, I saw, and I knew Stan. Stan was at Crystal Palace. I was at Charlton. So you know how Frank operated in terms of players that he brought into the club. He knew Stan as a young player, he knew Kevin Campbell. Frank was at Leyton Orient. I was at Charlton. Des Little, I'm talking about, was at Swansea. Bart Williams was with him at Leyton Orient. He ends up being the most expensive teenager when he goes from Leyton Orient to Sheffield Wednesday. So you can see how the deals and how things get pieced together. So Frank was very astute in that. His recruitment was really good, and he did identify and he realised that it was a changing of the guard in terms of some players who had been there and experienced relegation. So listen, if you're not good enough and you get relegated, there are going to be some changes, right? So he didn't get rid of everybody. He kept, a good core of experienced players who he felt could help the team progress, and he brought in a young, hungry group of new players who he felt could kind of galvanise already a talented squad. And obviously you still got the England captain there, you still got a fantastic player. I don't know who I'm alluding to, do you know what I mean? But the left back. So you still had some big names and some fantastic players for that league. So absolutely, they were there to be shot at. So that's how I can remember it. A lot happened in a season for me to be involved in or not involved in that game to then basically I played, I was at 3 clubs in one season, which is
that's mad, isn't it?
A big step up, really.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I've been lucky enough to meet you a couple of times, and one thing that stands out for me is the fact how much it meant you worked hard to reach a certain level, and you reached a level that we can only dream of, and many footballers dream of. How did it feel? In that summer, did you reflect on the fact, not that you've made it as such, but you've made it to the Premier League, to the big league, which a lot of players, really good players, never do. And we only brought in one player in the summer, didn't we, in forward positions, in Brian Roy, which I appreciate that would limit your opportunities to some extent. But you were part of a Premier League squad and you kind of made it into that league.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Roy was a big signing. I mean, he was on the World Cup stage, wasn't he? He was playing international football. Diminutive figure, really good character, funny guy. I mean, I took him under my wing, to be honest, when he first came in because his English wasn't brilliant. But if anybody knows anybody who's Dutch, they have a way of speaking. They're very matter of fact, very direct and to the point. And he was certainly that as well. So I found him hilarious at times. But, I played the first game back in the Premier League and got another assist, for him. He scores a great goal away at Ipswich.
Yeah.
So I was excited, like everybody else. Pre-season, everybody's vying for a place. Only 11 can get in the team. We're predominantly really playing with one striker. Brian Roy would play like the number 10 role. Before him it was Lars Bohinen. So Forest were quite forward-thinking in the way we set up and the way we approach games. 5 in the midfield or 1 forward would drop into that little position and give us a little bit of security. And obviously our fullbacks did bomb on. Pearcey loved to get forward and contribute with goals and assists. And Des Little would probably come around and create a 3 at the back. So, it was a good system and a really good formation. And the competition for places was good. I mean, I would imagine, in a lot of people's eyes as a squad player. But that doesn't mean I was going to be acceptant of the fact that I'm going to be a squad player. I was always fighting and hoping that I'd get the opportunity to go in and play. So, Stan misses the first game. I go in. That's what it's all about. That's what I was, that's what I was waiting for. That's what you work for. So in answer to your question, when you're a young player, I mean, I made my debut in the first division, which is the old Premier League. Yeah. For Charlton, I'm 17 years of age, and I wasn't in the system before the age of 16. So I wasn't, like now where players go in at 6 and they could be in the academy for 10 years. I didn't experience all of that. I wanted to be a footballer. I did various sports, did athletics, played basketball to a good level, and felt I was good enough to get an opportunity to play football. But it didn't appear that it was going to happen. And I was even doing painting, decorating briefly, with my uncle and my brother, going in at Millwall, going in at Charlton, and trying to earn an apprenticeship, you know, a YTS.
Did you play any district schools football at that age?
Yeah,
So I've been heavily
I
involved
played all
in
the
that.
levels. I played district football.
Was that London schools or?
Yeah, won the London Youth Cup. I was at a really good school for the last 2 years, which was a boys' school. So we pretty much dominated sports. We had quite a few guys who came out of that team who've gone on to have professionals' careers. You know, a lot of guys my age and maybe a little bit older and younger. So good pedigree. I knew I was in good stock, and the competition was high. So I always thought I was good enough. So you aspire to it. You get your debut. I made my debut at 17, having only been in the building, you know, a relatively short time at Charlton, and I just straight away felt, I could make a career out of this game. I'm going to apply myself, going to give it everything I can, and see where it takes me. And I had some really good mentors and coaches who pointed out other strikers. You know, if we look at Lincoln, where I'd been, you had Mick Harford, you had John Fashanu. I mean, I'm talking about a certain type of player, a number 9, and I had the physical attributes to mirror that. You know, to be very combative, very aggressive, and be very athletic. But there was more to it. You know, I felt that I could do a little bit more technically, but I caught up. I think I caught up quickly, but I didn't have the same grounding as a lot of players who have been, you know, in the system for a longer period of time. Whether it's a good or bad thing, it happens sometimes. When you come in, it's about grasping your opportunity. So for me, I had the aspirations of playing senior football, first team football from the age of 17. I went out on loan twice. Yeah. As far as I was concerned, I had the physical attributes to play men's football, whereas now, and I've coached as well, you know, now young players may be held back unless they're a phenomenal talent. You know, they're held back to play development football, under 18s, under 21s, under 23s. And they don't get that exposure to maybe men's football, or they don't get the opportunity to go out on loan. Going out on loan is vastly important. Ryan Yates is a great example. Joe Wall's done it. I coached Ryan Yates. He was in my 15s at Forest, and you know, Joe Wall and they're great lads. Tyler Walker, and the loan experience is the make or break, I believe, of young players, because if you're not exposed to that and then expected to just go in and play, you know, you don't know what you're going to get there.
Absolutely. You've kind of answered one thing we were going to ask about your route into Forest. You've covered that in detail, really. But who made the phone call when you were at Southend when it came? Because I know you've spoken before in other podcasts about that first game of the season when Forest were at Southend and you were preparing for the season. It always makes me laugh, the Barry Fry bit. I'll let you tell the story because you had us in stitches when you told us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the few times that people probably get the better of Barry Fry in certain transfer dealings. I mean, as I said, he was calling me. I mean, managers back in the day, they just call you directly, or their assistant call you directly. It's not like now where people go around the houses and obviously you get accused of getting tapped up. Right? But back in the day, and half the time you think it's friends pulling your finger, pretending to be. So Barry Fry's on the end of my phone and he's calling me whilst I'm at Lincoln. And as I said, I couldn't play in that game for Lincoln against Forest, but you know, he's one of a few teams that are showing interest, and he's saying, we
should say at this point, for any of our younger listeners, that Peterborough are in the Championship at that point, is what's now 100%. The Championship. And actually, I think at one point in the season, we're kind of hovering just around the playoffs as well.
You're talking about Peterborough. I mean, I've just got a guest. My dog's just coming. You can just see his head. Peterborough was, yes, in the Championship, but Southend was. And remember, I went to Southend, so he was the Southend manager. He had left Barnet. Yeah. Okay.
I meant to say Southend, sorry.
No, it's okay.
The dog put me off.
Barnet had bad financial issues, so all of their players were available to go on free transfers. So Forest signed Gary Ball. So there you go. There's another one. Forest signed Gary Ball on a transfer. He was highly regarded, and he would have commanded a decent transfer fee. So Forest got him for nothing. So I was aware of Bully. Barry Fry's at Southend. He takes probably about 12 or more players from Barnet over to Southend in the Championship. They've still got Brett Angel,
Yeah.
They've got Ricky Otto from Leyton Orient, who he takes over.
Good player.
So that there's a link. So Barrow was very good and very smart. He spends basically the $1.5 million that I think Forest paid for staying Collingwood on bringing myself in, Tommy Mooney, Chrissy Powell's there playing at left back, and he assembles a really competitive squad, strong group. And when I spoke about Frank early in terms of getting the right personnel in the building, he did that. We thought we was going to be the next Wimbledon. We was flying. First game of the season, as we alluded to, was playing Nottingham Forest on TV. I've signed for Southend. I've had a good pre-season. I remember scoring a hat-trick, left foot, right foot header. And Barrow is going crazy. You know, if anyone that is a good amp man in terms of promoting somebody, Barrow is the best guy out there. You know, he gets really loud. He's like a car salesman. And he was raving. Obviously, he had Stan. He brought Stan in. So he knew what Stan could do. So I'm not saying he was saying, I'm going to be the same as Stan, but he was talking along those lines. We've got rid of Stan, or we've sold Stan. Here's another player coming in. You know, we got Brett Angel. We're going to do something this season. And I'm listening, and I've signed, and I've had a good pre-season, and we're approaching the first game of the season. But I know, you can laugh and giggle, I know that I'm not available for the first game of the season because I'd been sent off, and I've got 2 games to serve at the start of the new season. You know, I got sent off at the back end of the season. He should have done his due diligence, but he hadn't. So he's talking me up, and we're approaching the game, and it's midweek, and you're doing the media. I'm just thinking at some stage, you know, I'm going to have to say to him, you do realise I'm not available at the weekend. I think the game was on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And I think we train on a Friday. We probably got to about Friday. The game's on a Sunday. And I sheepishly said, Baz, look, I'm not available on Sunday. So he's bleep, 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 bleep. He's effing and jeffing. He's like, you are joking me. Like, he's going to speak to the club secretary and he's checking and like, what's. And yeah, I'm not going to lie about it. Baz, I got sent off, and he's like, I mean, this is crazy thing about football. You've got all the data and everything you need at your disposal now. Whereas before, people just had to rely on their eyes and ears. Now, I always scored against Barnet. So if he was to really think about it, early in the season, playing at Lincoln, I scored at home. I think I got 2. And then we played at Barnet at the end of the season. And I'm Lincoln's main striker. And yet I'm on the bench that day because...
If your business runs on 5 different apps, 12 browser tabs, and 1 spreadsheet that everyone's afraid to touch, it's probably time for Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that connects every part of your business into one powerful, easy-to-use platform. So instead of wasting time switching between disconnected systems, your entire business works together in real time. Your team moves faster, your data stays accurate, and you can actually focus on growing your business. Let one unified system run your entire business. From the first opportunity to the final payment, everything works together in one place. Whether you're a small business or managing a large operation, Odoo gives you one flexible platform built to grow with you. Learn more at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from okay to very high. Know your sleep score with Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
I think I got sent off. What happened? I can't remember what happened, but I was on the bench that day. They came on, scored a goal. And if he was to look into it, he would have realised that I'm not going to be available. Anyway, he's probably lost the plot at that spur. So he's brought me in. He's not happy. And Stan missed the game as well.
Yeah.
So football works out really weird, you know. Stan misses a game. I don't play the game. We get the draw.
Yeah.
You know, we was good value for it that day.
Yeah, we were lucky to get the point that day. I remember it
We
well.
were good value for it that day, and it galvanised us, and it showed the league that, you know, we was going to be something to fear. And we went to Millwall, the new den. They opened a new den, and I got man of the match that day. We won 4-1. You know, you can find that, and you just see the season build. Southend went and won away at Wolves, and the results throughout the season, Southend was punching above their weight. They were like third in the league at one stage, getting into Christmas. But Balfour, there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes to the point that Balfour was going to leave, and he went to Birmingham. And Vic Jobson was the chairman at Southend, and it was pulling the rug really. It wasn't helping us as a group to go and kick on. So the team got disbanded. So then there was rumours that Forest was looking to bring in a striker. Stan was injured. And I would have been one of those that they was looking at. And when the call came, it was no-brainer that I would, definitely be interested in going to speak and come to sign for Forest. Although, in the November, Balfour being Balfour, he literally had sold me to a Belgian club, top league. He had sold me, but he hadn't had the conversation with me. This is what happens in football. He had sold me, and it was in the papers, and I was taking some time off. We just had our first daughter in the November, and obviously I've only been in the new house from pre-season, so July, whatever it may be. And there's no way I'm leaving, especially to go abroad to play football. So I've got the phone call from him, and he's, we've got a great deal. Your wages are going to be incredible. Top flight. It's a good deal for the club. Baz, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving. It all sounds great, and it's on the house phone back in the day. You can imagine.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. So he spat his dummy out. He was sulking. The club was missing out on a transfer fee. I'm not going anywhere. But that's where the club was. The club just wasn't on a financial, good footing. So Balfour, he left. He jumped ship first. And then you could see that the team got disbanded. Brett Angel went to Everton. I went to Forest. And then, what could have been a really good side, Southend have paid the price since over the years and have got relegated and are no longer in the league. So there's always a story to tell. I mean, I go off on a tangent sometimes, but it gives people context to how things kind of shape up. Things happen for a reason in football. It's not a coincidence. There's always a connectivity somewhere along the line.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So, excuse me. It's funny because I had a friend who was a Southend fan randomly back then, and he said when you were going really well, the chairman didn't want promotion because he couldn't afford to fund.
No, and that's the problem you have in football is that you have to be careful, and if you haven't got the infrastructure and the finance and whatever it may be, as a group of players, you just want to win games and get promoted. And as fans, that's all you want from your team and your club, right? So you don't want to hear anybody coming out. So I felt really disappointed for the Southend fans to see, they could see that we got a really good opportunity here, a good core. Third in the championship we was at one stage. I remember being there thinking, this is crazy. The fan base.
We were about 12th at the time as well.
Yeah, and Forest was struggling. Struggling. The Southend was flying, and we just had an owner who literally stopped paying us, weren't getting our bonuses. We didn't have the right training kit. Honestly, there was all sorts of things, and you just think, oh wow, and we was going to go on strike, but you just want to play because the only people who lose out are the fans. We're owed money. We don't want. It's the shambles, isn't it? That's the side of football you don't want to see. So it all worked out in the end, but unfortunately, Southend are they've plummeted out of the leagues. And I've had conversations with podcasts for Southend or whatever and discussed this, but it's terrible to see what can happen to a football club.
Absolutely. Like
it's fair to say it worked out quite well for Forest, though, because we got you. So
their loss was our gain.
No, you have to do what you have to do, and you know, it was a no-brainer to leave Southend and join Nottingham Forest, because if it wasn't going to be that season, you just felt that Forest have got all the infrastructure, all the ambition, and all the history, and they are going to, which is crazy when we look 20 plus years where the club just couldn't attain that. So it shows you how difficult it is to get out of that league. It's no mean task at all.
Yeah, I think you've alluded to it. That team had real character, and you don't see it very often now, but I was confident at the end of that season that our team would adjust to the Premier League really easily and really quick. I didn't think we'd finish third, admittedly, but there was no doubt in my mind, because I remember, you know, we signed a few overseas players, which wasn't the norm back then, and I know, you know, some really good players, and going into that league thinking, yeah, we can have a go at this. And I remember that Ipswich game, because I was slow getting my ticket. I ended up having to sit in the Ipswich end, and the end they scored at, when he scored, I jumped up, and there was about 500 Forest fans around me sat in the Ipswich end. It was just another takeover, and you kind of take it for granted being a Forest fan, being a relatively big club. But yeah, they were very, very happy days and a brilliant Premier League. But I know Kate was going to ask a bit about one or two of those players in that squad, weren't you?
Yeah, so I think, you know, we've already sort of touched on the fact that you played with some real legends in your time at Forest. You know, we've already briefly spoken about Stone, and we know you had a good relationship with Pearce. Collymore, you've already mentioned. It was slightly less commonplace at the time to have international players in your squad. So one thing that I wanted to ask you is, what was it like playing with the original Haaland?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And listen, Alfie's a funny guy, man. And I've seen him over the years a few times with his son, which is brilliant to see. You know what I mean? When you consider, you always want your children to surpass you and do well, right? I mean, it's fair to say that Erling has surpassed Alfie. You know, he's a fantastic player and a striker as well. And Alfie was a centre half when we assigned him. So we signed the first two Norwegian players in English football in Alfie Inge Haaland and Lars Bohinen. I mean, Lars was a legendary player, great player, number 10, played in that floating position, really different. And then Alfie was a centre half, but probably wasn't tall enough to be a centre half. Ended up being a holding midfielder, or, you know, a rampaging combative centre mid. But Alfie wasn't getting many games, and his English wasn't great. Whereas Lars was flying, Lars was playing, and his English was great. So there was a contrast. So Alfie was quite miserable. But I loved it. I thought he was hilarious. I could understand why he was miserable. Do you know? Because he wouldn't have had a real grasp of the English and the humour and the banter. You know what's going on. There's a lot to go on. And when you're not playing, you don't feel part of it anyway. You can feel miserable. So he would come into training. He would kick anything that moved. Alfie, he was great. I didn't blame him. I was the same. You know, you get stuck in if you're not playing. You can maybe kick someone out of the team and get. So we had some real characters, and those two, you know, to have the first two Norwegian players. Obviously, well, would it be the first night? There was Yang Anger Fjortoft, wasn't there? Mm. So yeah, at Swindon, he was a striker as well. Yeah. One of the first few, I would say, Norwegian players to play in the country, and they were both really good acquisitions for the club. I mean, Alfie went on to have a really good career. Obviously, went to Man City, and his son's obviously done very well as well. Yeah. But Lars, who we sold to Blackburn, you know, that was hard to deal with. But Blackburn were the Premier League champions, so that's why he would leave Forest to go to Blackburn. So, yeah, good players. I mean, you've mentioned those two. Have I missed anything else? Did you ask me about anybody else?
That was those two.
You just mentioned, you know, obviously you had a great relationship with Stuart Pearce, and
yeah. Piercy was, I think, what Piercy would have appreciated was just my work ethic. I mean, how can you not? You know, I'd played lower league. I'd started in the top flight at Charlton. Charlton was a first division team, top flight team. I had to go down to the fourth division at Lincoln. Sometimes players are scared to do this, but if I'm not playing throughout my career, that's why I played for so many teams. If I'm not playing, I am knocking on the manager's door and being a real headache. Like, I want to go out on loan, or I want to be sold, or I can't waste time. Like, you never get this time back as a young footballer. If you're not playing and you're sitting on the sidelines, that's time gone. And when you get injuries, that's when you really do appreciate the fact that I can't waste any time. So I think Stuart, and he played non-league as well. He'd come into the game, didn't he, as a non-league player. I think he just appreciated that there was a transition at the club as well. If we was training and running, I would always be up for it. I'd be running towards the front. I'd be working hard in training. And there was still a few players at Forest who maybe were a bit comfortable, and there was some that just wasn't really ready or used to this sort of. Because we brought in a fitness guy, we brought in a guy called Pete Edwards, who Frank Clark brought in, who had all these ideas, about parachutes and, nutrition, and all of this was really forward thinking. And it's like you have to drag some people kicking and screaming into the new age. You have to evolve. And I was mad for that. I embraced all of that. Fitness has always been something that is a non-negotiable for me. I've coached. I still look after myself. If you can't motivate someone to go out and, work hard, that's half the battle lost already. So you have to have that inner desire to go and push yourself. So I think Piercy appreciated that. We got on really well. I knew he was the England captain and a legend of the game, but I never treated him that way. Do you know what I mean? I just treated him as a teammate, and sometimes, I'd give him a bit of stick, and I'd have to pinch myself and think, I'm talking to the England captain here, and I'm ribbing him, and I'm telling him how terrible his right foot is. That would be my comeback a lot of the time. Is like, my left foot is better than your right foot. But his left foot is like legendary. But no, I that would be my little bit, and we'd play games, and he was professional. He wanted to do well. He was the captain of the club. Being a captain, there's a lot of pressure on you, whether you be a manager or a captain. Everybody looked to him. He set the right examples, and he stayed. He stayed loyal to the team, didn't he? He stayed loyal to the club. Whereas he could have been sold, he could have left numerous times. He was England captain at the end of the day, and he stayed loyal to the club. So, you have to respect him for that.
Yeah, I think obviously you've got that London thing going on there as well. Obviously, both being from London, but I think you've hit the nail on the head. You had a fairly humble background in football terms compared to what you sometimes see today. And Stuart Pearce was the same, wasn't he? So he's very, I don't know if you hear him interviewed, he's very self-deprecating, isn't he, about his ability. And you're sometimes like that. And I think it's a bit unfair because aside from that incredible chest, people forget you were our Premier League top scorer in our second season.
Yeah, I was, I think it's humble, just being honest. Sometimes people get carried away with themselves. You know what your strengths are, your weaknesses. I knew what my strengths were. My strengths were certainly my physicality, my athleticism, my desire. I mean, these are non-negotiables for me, and yet not everybody has those things. And if you have those traits plus talent and all the ability, you're going to be a world-class player. So Messi, Ronaldo, there's a reason why they're at the top level continuously at their age. I played until I was 41. I played in the league until I was 38. Some people can't continue that level of consistency. They physically and mentally they can't, move themselves forward. So, for me it was just about being a good professional, making the most of my ability, my attributes, and trying to improve, which I did. I improved the higher I played. I got better, as you would do playing with better players.
Oh, that's brilliant. That brings us nicely actually to a little bit. We're going to talk to you more current affairs, the World Cup, and obviously. As we record this, we've just watched England play the sort of game we did not expect to see as a first World Cup game, I suspect. I just wanted your take on the World Cup so far and the England performance. And we say it every time, don't we, our chances. I know there's some fabulous teams out there, but I didn't expect to see what I saw last night in that second half.
Yeah, let's start with the first half. You know, we look okay, we're quite comfortable, but we had some lapses in concentration, you know, to concede 2 goals. To concede the second one on the stroke of half time would have been really annoying for the coaching staff and the manager, you know, because we've gone through the qualifying campaign, you know, not conceding. That's always a concern, isn't it, when you go through a campaign so easy? But you know when the real test starts, it's going to be more difficult. So I think it showed there are some frailties in the England squad. I would say defensively, especially at centre-half, that would be my biggest concern for the team. You know, we've got a lot of energy. I think our midfield's strong. Declan's going to have to really work hard and be very defensive-minded. If Jude is going to be, you know, marauding all over the pitch, which is what he likes to do, he covers every blade of grass. But somebody's going to have to sit in there and stand in front of the 2 centre-halves. So that takes a little bit away from Declan, but somebody has to do it in that team, you know. But the second half, as you mentioned, was night and day in terms of our energy, intensity. You know, the manager would have got into the team, you know, and, you know, by all accounts, he just reminded them of the fact that we've told you already we're going to play expansive football, high energy, intensity, and we've taken the shackles off. So what are you doing right now? That would have been a reminder. Like, why are you playing within yourself when we've given you free rein to just go out and express yourself? Now, I played for Barry Fry, who would have like 5 or 6 strikers on the pitch, and he would make 3 substitutes at one point. Now, if you've got a manager who's all out attack and he's telling you just go after it, get after it, I'm telling you that really does fill you with a lot of confidence as a player, because you think we're just going to go out and try and score more goals than the opposition and win the games. And if you're on the front foot and you dominate the game, invariably, you know, you have a lot of possession and all the rest of it. So there are going to be some games where we don't have as much possession, and teams are going to have the same philosophy and ethos. Like France, I would imagine, would be very similar to us. It's not going to be all our own way. But I think the fans and everybody that watched the game last night would appreciate the fact that we just went out for 15, 20 minutes and bombarded them with enthusiasm, intensity, shots at goal, peppering the keeper, just getting after them. That's all you want to see, right? Because there's no point playing this passive sideways football, going back to the keeper. I mean, it annoys me. The modern day game frustrates for goalkeepers and centre halves to be touching the ball more than any other player on the outfield. It's mind-boggling. Like, there's a reason why they're keepers and centre halves, you know. But they're touching the ball. They're touching the ball more than anybody else now. Which, if you're smart and you set the traps, you allow certain players to get on the ball. And that's, to be fair to Croatia, they set some traps and they caught us out. So there you go.
Yeah, I thought Croatia were good first half, to be fair, as well.
What's your feeling of the World Cup so far? We won't do the political thing about America and FIFA. That's been done to death. But
there's always politics. There's always politics around every World Cup, isn't there? Because it's a stage and gives people an opportunity to amplify their voices. But as we get into it, the football takes over, and you know we're pretty much the first week in now. I think today's the last game of first round ties. The football's been good. There are going to be some teams who come out and shock us again. I hope so. You know, teams that equip themselves really well. Japan, I think they're going to be a problem. Some of the African nation sides. The gap is smaller now in terms of how it used to be. There's 48 teams, I get that. And there are some teams that have come through who you can't imagine would get out of the group stages. But, yeah, we're going to have our work cut out. You know, just be perfectly honest. We are one of the stronger nations, and you know we've got some fantastic players. But when it comes to the crunch and you get out of the group stages, that's where that's why it would have been disappointing to concede 2 goals, because that was a reminder of the fact that we've played against some good opposition and we got beaten by Japan. You know, when we've played some good teams leading into this tournament, friendlies, we've been beaten. So I'm pretty sure, you know, people should be aware of the fact that there are some teams that we played and they might have been friendlies and experimental. You know, even at the City ground, we got beat. So there are some reminders there of the quality that we're up against. But no, I'm positive. That's not being negative. I'm positive. I think we can go far. Winning it would be like amazing as always. We always say that
Yeah.
it takes a lot to go through the tournament to win. You know, Harry Kane has to stay fit and play and score goals, and other people have to step up if he's not doing it. That's my concern. You know, if Harry Kane's not scoring the goals, that we might struggle to get enough goals for our team. So, to win a tournament, you need numerous goal scorers, and you need a goal scorer. I mean, Messi's got a hat trick already.
Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible. And I think you've nailed it there. I look at it and think there's the extra round now as well, of course, but it's no bad thing that things weren't perfect in the first game. It's not a wake-up call, because you don't need that. But what scares me, and we always do this, don't we? I watched the France game, and they were struggling, and they bring players off the bench, and you just think, wow, what a depth of squad they've got.
But that's what we did. That's what we did.
Yeah.
If you can make those changes, you can bring Rashford on.
Yeah.
You know, arguably could start, and then you got Saka, arguably who could start.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Wow, we've got good strength in depth.
Yeah, I agree. But I felt the two wingers he picked were the backup wingers. I think he brought on the first team, didn't he, almost? Because I think Rashford's an absolutely phenomenal player, and he had that dip, and you can see the old Rashford now. I mean, that goal was lovely. And I love Saka. I know you're an Arsenal fan, but he's the one player in the Premier League I wish Forest could sign. I absolutely love him. I think he's a world-class player. But, of course, he's coming back from an injury, and we need him doing the things he did last night if we're going to compete, don't we, I think? But we shall see. We shall see. So, if we move on, and I'll hand over to Kate first. She's got a question, and I know you've got some good insider knowledge, because I should say, we know you're an advocate for, obviously, you'd had that job with the PFA previously, and that included women's football, which has become bigger and bigger. And obviously, you know my daughter Ellie, who's a big advocate of women and women in football. And you talk about kids surpassing you. I feel like that already. With Ellie surpassing me.
Ellie surpassed you a long time ago. I've been on a football pitch with Ellie, but I don't remember you playing. But I played alongside Ellie. There you go.
I know. I remember it at Ilkeston Town very
That's
well.
Right.
But no, I'll send you the videos. No. But no, over to Kate, sorry.
So yeah, obviously Marinakis has invested quite heavily in the Forest women's side, which as well as the men's side, and it's been an interesting journey to watch them rise. And we obviously had Carly Davis last season, and I mean I thought it was a reasonable season really, in the sense that we've been promoted into that league and we did finish mid-table. And when it was announced that she was parting ways with the club and Tom Mallinson was coming in, I think there was some concern amongst the fans about maybe his lack of experience within women's football specifically. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that in general and specifically with regards to Forest.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the growth. And it's about the investment. We spoke about that before. We've got an ambitious owner. And generally, if you're playing in the Premier League teams do invest in their women's sides as well. It's when they're not playing in the Premier League that, unfortunately, the finances get pulled away from the women's teams. Now, I sat on the FA Women's Board for 8 years and proud to have done that. It was my choice. It wasn't something I had to do or was told to do. I did that because I wanted to learn more about the women's game and be a good ally and advocate for more men getting involved. We have these conversations all the time where some men won't watch women's football. I'm not watching that. But have you actually watched it? During the Euros, women are hugely successful. It was great to be part of that, to go to the games. We had the Euros in England where the women, and if you've got daughters and you've got family members and they're female and they want to play the game, it's great, right? It must be great. My only concern with the women's game at the moment is I think we've peaked and there's a bit of a drop-off. And that could be a concern in terms of attendances. Last year, I think the numbers are skewed by depends how good your PR team is in terms of attendances going up. But if anybody looks at it closely, you would see that Arsenal made up the vast majority of female attendances last season. So take out Arsenal's attendances. Across the league, the numbers aren't particularly great. And to get TV involved in women's football no one wants to see an empty stadium. So we need more people in the stadium. But it doesn't help with timings of fixtures as well. So there's a lot to it. The women's game seems to come second in terms of we will focus on the men's game and the fixtures and everything first, and then what's left we can now attribute to the women's game. So it's not ideal, if women are playing at midday, 12 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Well, a lot of their football fans, they want to go to the men's game. Who are they going to choose? Arsenal tend to do, Forest have done that as well, where you've got the dual season ticket and you can watch both teams. But it can be difficult to decide who you're going to watch and when you're going to go and watch. So, yeah, it's not easy. The women's game peaked, certainly won the Euros and getting to the World Cup final, and surpassed the men in terms of going that bit further and getting over the board and winning and, just winning. Serena, I always felt that, we appointed Serena when I was on the board. I came in just after Phil Neville was appointed. And Serena's just a winner. She'd won it with the Dutch national team. You could just tell she knew what she was doing to get this team mentality. She built a really good ethos. And to be fair to Gareth, who I know really well as well, they had conversations like we're having conversations. St George's Park is really good if you get the opportunity. If you're there and you're in the hub and you're having lunch and this, that and the other, you can speak to people openly where you wouldn't get that opportunity anywhere else. St George's Park, that's what it was built for. So the women's team was certainly supported by the FA, but in terms of club football, the bigger teams, the Man Cities, the Arsenals, Man United didn't have a women's team. They disbanded their women's team and only came back, 4 years ago? Ish. It might be wrong in terms of 4 years, but it was a disgrace that Man United disbanded their women's team. Their best players left at 16 and went to Man City and other teams across the country. That fit, but they didn't see it. The men side of the infrastructure did not see value in the women's team, so they didn't support the women's team. There was no infrastructure, so without that, it's hard for the women's game to flourish and keep moving forward. But we're going to speak about Tom, right? If that's okay, Tom Hanson. Tom, I was coaching at Forest, and Tom was in his infancy as a coach. So that's how long Tom's been there. He's a good guy. He's no longer young now, but he was a young person then. I saw Tom as a young man. He's enthusiastic. So he's got the values of the club. He knows what it takes. Even when I was coaching, in those days, early days, there was an opportunity for me to manage Forest ladies. Now, there was no real infrastructure for me to manage Forest ladies. It was like, well, who am I working with? Where are we training? What are we doing? There was nothing. So I was approached, and it was like, would you consider managing? And I considered it. I thought an opportunity is an opportunity, but what am I working with? You want a chance, don't you, to go and do well? And there was no real ambition then for Forest ladies to go on and do anything. But it certainly changed in recent times. So Tom's got the experience as a coach, of working with some really good coaches, working with some really good players, and more importantly, he's got the culture and he understands the club. So I'm sure Tom will be successful. It shows you the ambition of the club, that who wants to be a manager? We get rid of a manager who got us promoted and won a cup. I went to the cup final. I remember that game. Where was the game? Can you remember where the women played the cup final?
Who, Arsenal?
Ago. Huh?
Who, Arsenal, you mean? Or...
No. Forest.
Oh, in the League Cup final. Sorry. Yeah.
Where was that game?
Stoke City, was it? Or that they played somewhere?
Val or somewhere. I can't remember where it was. But I remember going to the game. Yeah, I remember going to the game and spending some time with the Forest women on the day. And it was good to see. It was great to see, There was men there. There was obviously men supporting the women's team. Unfortunately, you need success for more eyes and more people to get behind it. But it's unfair because the women have to play at such a level to keep our interest. And I don't think that's fair, Off the back of the Lionesses, if you're not going to get everything you need off the back of the Lionesses, I don't know how you're going to do that, because they have to be successful and they have to win tournaments every time they play for us to really, for TV and interest and sponsorship and, the finances. It's just unfair, right? But that's where the women's game is. WSL 2, WSL 1. I mean, there wasn't a WSL 2. Now there is a WSL 2, which, Forest are playing in. There are 4 leagues in the women's infrastructure. And you're hoping that, WSL 1 is certainly full-time and professional. You're hoping that WSL 2 will mirror that and be full-time and professional. I work for the PFA, which is the Players Union, and we brought on WSL 1 years ago, and we've now brought on WSL 2 as our members. And, one of the remits around that, the criteria is that they are a full-time professional football club for them to be, members of the PFA. Like the 4 leagues that we have, in the men's league, they are full-time professionals, they are PFA members. But they would get the same support and guidance that we can offer, them, which is, it's taken this long for the women's game to get to the point where we're having these conversations with like WSL2. So the future's bright. Tom, I believe, will do a fantastic job because he's got an ambitious owner. We know we've got an ambitious owner, right? You've got ambitious people who will support him and help him. And it's just for him to make the right decisions at the right time and get a bit of luck and just, keep improving the team. If you keep bringing in good players, there's every chance that, listen, the ambition of the club is to get to WSL 1.
Yeah.
So
absolutely, yeah.
That's great to be involved in a scenario as a coach, as a manager. If I was Tom being offered that opportunity all those years ago with what he has at his disposal, I would have snapped that. Like, you've got every chance of being successful, But then there was just no infrastructure for the women during that time. So I'm sure Tom will do well, and it's an exciting time. So I wish him well.
Absolutely.
That's right. Walsall, that's right. I can't remember where it was, but I remember going to the game and a good game. It was good to see them win. And,
absolutely.
I was just taken in. Like, every time you go to a women's game, there's a different feel to the men's game. It's not as volatile. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know why the men let themselves down on a match day, but they do. Let's be perfectly honest. You go to a women's game, it feels better. It's more inclusive. You've got children, and you're not worried about what somebody does or what they say. So it just feels great. And no, I've always enjoyed being in and around the women's game, and I just wish more and more men would,
I think it will come.
Respect and give it an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it will come gradually. If we move on, I'm conscious we're running short on time. Just a quick synopsis, really, on where you see where Forest are at after what we've built in the last, obviously, 4 years, but particularly the last 2 years. We had that wonderful season of finishing 7th. We've had, myself and Kate especially, we've had wonderful European tours and lots of time off work and lots of holes in the bank account. And where we go from here, because I feel like, and especially watching last night, if we can just hang on to Elliot Anderson for one more season, I know it's going to be hard, and I know the grapevine says he's gone. And a question I would also like to put to you as an Arsenal fan. Arsenal are in a really strong position, aren't they? Financially and having won the league. Why on earth are they not looking to fill that gap alongside Declan Rice? Because they seem like a pair made in heaven, don't they? The way they play together. And I've got this vision of Arsenal swooping in at the 11th hour like they did with that, what's his name, Tottenham lad. That was going to go to Tottenham from Palace. Brain's gone. Left winger / number 10. Eze. There we go. Sorry. The way they swooped in for Eze, I could almost see them doing that with Anderson, even though it's 120, 130 million, because although that's a lot of money, I feel like whoever signs him out of those two is going to win the league next year. I think he's that good.
You're talking like you don't. Who knows? Arsenal may well have him, on their list of potential signings. Who knows?
Declan Rice in his ear in training.
Exactly. Who knows? I mean, I always felt that if you're going to do a deal, you should have done the deal before the World Cup, because the value is going through the roof. It's skyrocketing. So if I was a club, I would have tried to got that deal done as soon as possible. Pre World Cup going in, everybody would have known where he's going to end up playing his football next season. But it's not happened. So that leaves the club in limbo, you know, probably stressing, are we keeping him? You know, Gibbs White, you know, we've got some good players. Clubs do have to sell, unfortunately.
Of course.
You know, because of PSR, you know, and people are probably sick of all that, but I do enjoy the debating topic around finance. You know, I studied bits and pieces around governance, and I think it's important that people just understand we've been stung. You know, we got stung, didn't we? Financial fair play, and we had points deduction. Every club has to adhere and follow the rules in terms of buying and selling. So someone has to go, I believe, you know, whether it be Morgan or
I think
Elliot.
it has to be a big one, though. My understanding financially is we're not in a bad place, and there might be a little bit of wheeling and dealing, but we're not forced to sell one of the big guns. Like for me, the big guns are obviously Morgan, Elliot, and for me, I always say it, Murillo. I think he's an unbelievable talent, and I genuinely think if we keep that spine, next season could be special because we're not in Europe, of course, and that will help us.
Well,
I don't know.
that's the. You say it can help us. Players have played European football now and they've had the taste, and they may well play European football next season. So this is what happens, right? You get a taste for it, and as fans, you know, last season, fans going into the season was, you know, gonna win the league or we're gonna qualify for Champions League, and anything below that seemed like it was a disappointing season. So we rallied towards the end. We did have a really disappointing early campaign. Let's be really honest about it. And some players didn't play at their level, you know. But it's a season. You get judged on a season. But sometimes people get impatient and managers lose their job. I mean, we lost the odd manager, didn't we, throughout the season? Yeah. So that shows you the pressure that everybody's under in the Premier League to not only stay in the league, but to actually be challenging and be at the top end. So when you look back at it over the course of the season, we played European football. You know, we got as far as the quarters. You know, we played Villa. Yeah, it was crazy. You know, we had a real opportunity to maybe get to a final. It doesn't happen. But if you offered that at the beginning of the season, I'm sure you would take that. It was just a disappointing league position, I suppose, that people look at and think after finishing seventh the season before, you want to be in and around that every season. Now, I think for Forest it'll be difficult to maintain that level of top 10, top 5 even, top 6, top 7, year in, year out. It's because you're competing with 6 teams who financially can spend more money than you every year. Yeah. So Forest are always going to be playing catch up. You know, we've got an owner who could, if given the opportunity, spend as much money as he wants, but he's been held back. He can only do what he can do. So we have the ambition. We've got good fan base. We've got the infrastructure. We just have to abide by the rules. And every season, window by window, we can strengthen. And you're right. If we could keep our best players, but you're victim of your own success. These players are playing at the top. You know, he's playing in the World Cup, Elliot Anderson. Yeah. You know, how do you keep him? You know, it's going to be difficult.
I was watching him last night and thinking, it's not just Man City and going to be looking at this performance thinking, oh, this lad can play. What's his name? How old is he? And because he's got everything, hasn't he? We know that, and we're seeing the progression he's made is for starting. I'm very conscious. I want to hand over to before I come to our last little bit. If there's anything Kate wants to add, I've been jumping in a bit quickly. Sorry, Kate.
No, I think it's really interesting to get your perspective on that, on the whole Elliot and obviously mentioning Morgan as well, who may not be out at the World Cup but is absolutely integral to our team. And yeah, I suppose you've sort of semi-answered it already, but if you were Vitor Pereira, what is your priority or your aim for the upcoming season?
I would want to know what the realistic goals of the club are, you know, because you just have to be realistic and then convey that to the fan base. So if I'm the manager, you all have to be on the same page, because sometimes you come out as a coach or manager and say, you know, we do well to stay in the league. And no one really wants to hear that. And then the owners don't back you with that statement. But I think as a group of fans, if you was told that, you know, this might be another transition for us, we might have to sell one of our best players. You know, we just might have to do that. But we will have the money available to bring in players. It's going to be hard to replace a player of those statures, you know, 100 million. We're not going to spend 100 million on another player. We'll probably get 2 or 3 players or 4 for that amount of money. So you see what you're dealing with. I just think that the manager, he will want to know what the realistic aim and ambition of the club is. Once everybody conveys that, if we are in and around where we said we was going to be, then that's fine. You know, we've had managers come in this season with different remits, and the scenarios change and the situations change. So if he doesn't start well, is he under pressure straight away? You know, are we going to be impatient? What are we as a group of fans expecting from the club? To be challenging like top 5, top 6? You know, what are you looking for? Your fans, what do you want from the team?
I find that really difficult because I know what I want from the team, and the thing that I want more than anything is some silverware. You know, we were so close with, you know, the Europa this year, and it was quite some feeling going into Villa Park on that semi-final day with you know, the weight of what could be was so heavy. It was like nothing I've ever experienced, but it also gives you the bug, doesn't it? And, you know, we've made several semi-finals in recent seasons, and I would love to get to a final and see some silverware, you know, but I also realise that is a huge ask. And when you look at our season, I think Europe was the success, but you can't say that where we finished in the league was a success. So it's easy to get carried away in close of season. And to hear your answer to that was very grounding, I would say. So I would love some silverware, but I just don't want to worry all season this year. I don't want them to age me any more than they already have.
We don't do boring, do we? That's the thing. We'll either be challenging for Europe or fighting relegation. We don't do bobbling along in the middle anymore. Those days are gone.
Mid-table obscurity sometimes is not enough for fans either. It's like what, you know, to be comfortable in the middle of the table in the Premier League and to be in around 10th spot. As you said, you would have no stress and no worries, but for some it just wouldn't be enough. I think if you're Fulham,
I was going to say,
do you know what I mean? Fulham have been in and around that and have had opportunities to kick on. I think, listen, it's our 5th season coming up, our 5th campaign. Let's look at it that way as well. If you can stay in the Premier League year in, year out, you've got every right to want to keep improving. I mean, look at Tottenham. Do you know what I mean? Look at Tottenham. 2 17th, you know, place finishes, and they've escaped relegation by the skin of their teeth 2 years running.
Such a shame.
We're gutted about. We wish they went. But it just shows you, with all of their infrastructure and everything that they have, how difficult it is for them to kick on. You know, haven't got to a Champions League final. You just want to keep building, don't you? And we need some stability, and we need a manager and a group of players that stay with us. And we have some aging players. You know, let's look at it that way. There are going to be some changes, whether it be this season or next season. We have some aging players. I would imagine that the age group needs to come down a bit, and we need to find those young players, some players who are in their pomp, in their prime, that we can bring in who can take us for the next 4 or 5 seasons. So we are transitioning still.
I think you're always transitioning now, though, aren't you, as well? Unless you're that... Even Man City have been transitioning, haven't they, really? So
I'd take that on board. And I think we've got a group of players that did well in the last couple of years, and we've also got a number of players who've come in, didn't start well, took time to settle, which can happen, especially from other leagues, and they showed us what they could be capable of towards the end of the season. So, reasons to be cheerful. I'm going to finish with something as a target man, old school number 9 striker, you got something in common with Peter Crouch, who was obviously another one of those, and that was your tennis playing ability. Not a lot of people know this, but Jason Lee's a competent tennis player. And told us fantastic.
I've not played since last summer because I had a knee operation in.
Yeah.
I might have told you that. I played in a charity game in October, football, and 7 months since, and just rehabbing. So I've not played tennis yet this summer, but I will get back on court. I'm running again. I love tennis. I probably went about 14 years without playing tennis, which is crazy for me. But I just stopped playing tennis in the summers. I used to play tennis every summer as part of my pre-season. It mirrors a lot of the football movement, you know, the side-to-side, forward and back. It's very dynamic. Spend a couple of hours out on court. I've not bit the bug in terms of paddle. I was going to
say, that's what aging tennis players normally do.
I'm a tennis snob. Any tennis snob won't play paddle. any man and his dog can play paddle. So, and it's doubles. And whenever I play doubles at tennis, I get a little bit irritated as well because doubles can be really frustrating.
This is a story I'm going to drag out of you because we're going to finish on, obviously, terribly sad that we lost one of the Forest all-time legend in John Robertson, but you knew him quite well because of your mutual love of tennis. Obviously, he was a little bit older than you. But I love the story, and I'm going to let you tell it about his competitive nature right until he could barely, play anymore.
No, listen, I've known Robbo a long time. I remember Robbo. My first interaction with Robbo would have been during his Leicester days with Martin, Martin O'Neill, and obviously I'm at Forest, and there's always that link, isn't there, again, between the clubs, and then there's the Thursday club that you may have heard of, people might have heard of, West Bridgeford, and, I'm friends with Frank Clark and, Alan Hill, and all these, legendary characters who have been around the club, and Robbo, brilliant number 2, never wanted to be a manager, but brilliant number 2, because he was able to bridge the gap, between players and management, and he could say the right things at the right time. He could be harsh and hard, but he could also put his arm around you and show you empathy when needed. So, for me, my personal experiences, interactions with him were always very positive and always very good. And in those early days, which I spoke about Tom Mallison, when I was coaching at Forest and I was working at Forest on a regular basis. I worked at Forest in the community trust, I coached in the academy. I found time to go and play tennis in West Bridgeford quite a bit, and Robbo would be up there all day, every day. He'd have the knee strap on, smoking a fag, having a coffee, not living the life, in terms of an athlete, but the desire for him to get on court, and it would have been double. So, anybody can he challenged me to a game, and I was like, "Are you sure? Are you sure, Robbo? I don't know. I don't know if we should play." And he was like, "Yep, just get on the other end of that court." And he controlled me and my partner, to get on the other end of the court. And we're giving away 20 years or whatever, maybe 30 years, and fitness as well. And listen, he wouldn't have wanted me to take it easy. He wouldn't have wanted me to give him any, and he would have probably had a go at me. So we played, and what he lacked in terms of fitness and athleticism, he made up for in his determination to try and get to balls that he should have just let go. And it was hilarious. You can imagine he was getting more and more disgruntled and angry, and he's kicking off. And it's not tennis, is it? If you're effing and playing. There's a certain snobbery attached to tennis, and people along the course, are listening to us and seeing Robbo kicking off, and the more we play, the more annoyed he's getting and frustrated. But listen, we played many times, and it wasn't about the challenge for me. It was just about spending some time with a man. That's an opportunity for me to spend some time with a great human being, a footballing legend, and this shows you where you land in football. It was to know that you end up meeting these sort of people. When I was a kid, growing up in London, I wasn't to know I was going to end up living in Nottingham the best part of 25 years, and growing a family, and being adopted by the city, and it's been great to me. And you never know who the people you're going to meet. And Robbo was somebody that, as I said, he was always kind to me, and I enjoyed spending time with him. And obviously he had his ailments towards the end, and I just think it's great that he's got the stand named after him.
Yeah.
We've remembered him in the right way. He's a football icon. He was certainly a different sort of footballer, in terms of aesthetically, the way he looked. But he had a wand, and he was a talented guy. So, listen, that's my tribute to John Robertson. I went to the funeral like lots of people did. I heard some fantastic eulogies and stories about the man, and he deserved all of them. So, long may it continue. We've got the stand. We get to see his name, and we can remember him on a regular basis.
I think fantastic words and a perfect place to finish. And a huge thank you from us at Tricky Talks, Jason, for spending the time with us and for what you've done in the past with the Garibaldi girls and whatnot. Really appreciate it. You're a fantastic advocate for Nottingham Forest Football Club, as well as the other things you do. And thank you so much for spending time with us. I'll let Kate do the socials before I forget. And obviously, tribute to Robbo. That's made my day. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, same from me. Thank you so much for spending the time with us and for agreeing to come on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I do have to say, anybody that is new to Tricky Talks, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, or on our website at www.trickytalks.com, on YouTube. So please like, subscribe, comment, and let us know what you think.
You rich.
Yeah!
Every wireless service comes with a cost, right? Wrong. The Text Now app lets you do your thing for free. Get real talk, real text, and 5G data for must-have apps with no monthly bill. Need more data? Add it right from the app. Done? Go back to free. No long-term contracts, no pressure, no surprises. Just wireless that works around you. Text Now. We've got your back. Download Text Now in your app store today. Wireless plans require the purchase of a SIM card. Visit textnow.com for terms and conditions.